The Sino-Indian War is a 1962 war between India and China. The war began with a border dispute. India lost the war to China after China occupied Tibet. India's present-day Arunachal Pradesh and Aksai claimed China as part of China, thus starting the border issue that eventually led to war. After China won the war and declared a unilateral ceasefire, Aksai occupied China but returned Arunachal Pradesh. After the war, India felt the need to strengthen its army. India's pacifist foreign policy also changed to some extent. The United States, the Soviet Union and the United Kingdom supported India in the war, while Pakistan sought to forge an alliance with China. China and India border, which is divided into three parts by Nepal, Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh and Bhutan. The length of this border extends from Myanmar to West Pakistan. The border includes some unresolved territories, Aksai Chin in the west, which is the equivalent of Switzerland, and is home to China's Xinjiang and Tibet autonomous regions. Tibet gained autonomous territory in 1985, Bhutan and Myanmar in the east, and Arunachal Pradesh in the Middle East, both at altitude of 5,000 meters. There are several peaks in Arunachal Pradesh at an altitude of more than 6,000 meters. Chinese troops occupied a large part of the region. In this war, like the Italian campaign in World, trees were occupied by China in 1962. Part of the western Xiang district of Arunachal Pradesh occupied the Mechuka Valley. Most of the fighting took place at high altitudes. Aksai Chin is a salt plate desert at an altitude. War won. Many soldiers on both sides died for the environment instead of being attacked by the enemy. The main reason for the war was the conflict over the sovereignty of Aksai Chin and Arunachal. There is a link between Tibet and Xinjiang, between Oksari, China, which claims part of India's Kashmir, and China's Xinjiang. The war is believed to have started when China tried to build the road. Before the war, India was overly sympathetic to China. India supports China's permanent membership in the UN Security Council. India never thought that China could attack India one day. Nehru later regretted it. The then chief of the Indian Army, the Khodans, considered Sabayathimaya China to be a bigger opponent than Pakistan. The reason for his disagreement with the defense minister was that it did not materialize. The western part of the Indo-China border was demarcated in 1834 when the Sikh missions invaded Ladakh. At that time the Sikh mislead ruled most of northern India, including Jammu and Kashmir. In 1842, the Sikh Miles signed an agreement in favor of the conventional limits of the time. In 1848, the British defeated the Sikhs and occupied Ladakh. The British sat down with Chinese diplomats to discuss the border. Although the boundaries of Pangong Reservoir and Karakoram are precise, the territory of Aksai Chin remains disputed. Survey of India official W.H. Johnson proposed the Johnson Line to show Aksai Chin as part of Kashmir. Johnson proposed a line to the Maharaja of Kashmir, and the Maharaja demanded a fixed 16,000 square kilometers. Johnson's proposal was called impure. His proposed boundary was called patently absurd and was claimed as far north as an old fort. There was not a single house where people lived. The place was used only as a stage for the Agari Kirga. The fort was probably built by the Kashmiris a few years ago and recaptured Xinjiang by the Chinese in India. Johnson later resigned from the survey. Maharaja Sahadullah established an army base and preserved it for several years. According to Francis Young Hunt, who visited the place, Shahidullah had been 17, and they occupied Shahidullah in 1890 before the problem could be resolved. By 1892, China had set up a demarcation line at Karakoram. Pre-war events: 1950 Battle of Chandor. After China's conquest of Tibet in this war, Nehru adopted a somewhat defensive strategy. He insisted on friendly coexistence with China. He feared a possible Chinese attack on India. McMahon limits 1954 Five-Pact meeting of 1970 and 1970 under an agreement between Nehru and Zhou Enlai. The Indian and Chinese authorities negotiated a settlement of the border dispute. India and China disagreed on the major areas demarcating the western border.